In Canada, alcohol is part of our culture, and kids grow up here with a wide variety of messages about it. So as parents, it's important we provide them with the tools they need to make healthy choices. Communication. Open communication between parents and children creates a trusting, supportive environment. It provides a stable base for kids to learn about alcohol so they can protect themselves from harm throughout their entire lives. Start the conversation early.
We talked to our son with alcohol at a very young age. When he would see us at family dinner drinking with, we talk about alcohol, we talk about, we'd actually tell stories about what we did as teenagers and the mistakes we made and why we made those mistakes at a very young age from the first time he actually asked questions.
When they start asking, I guess it's good to talk about it. It's obviously going through their minds, so it's good to help them out. Set them in a direction, hopefully.
I think sooner the better. I mean, my wife and I, we have a bit of a love of wine, and so a couple nights a week we'll sit down and talk about wine. So I think if your kids are there and you're enjoying it, I think it's important that you talk to them about it.
Starting from, I think, as early as you can and using language that best fits the age of what the children are. But I think there's no better or worse time. It's whenever parents can really do it.
My husband and I both, Mike and I both, started quite early because I'm in a mixed marriage, so I'm Indian, he's English. And lots of I grew up with Indian parents that said no drinking. It's just not allowed. And as soon as I left home, I was like, I'm going to drink. So I didn't want that for my kids. So I introduced it quite early, the chatter.
If you don't teach your kids, how should they know better? Where are they going to learn? They're going to learn from school, they're going to learn from media, they're going to learn from their friends.
As a teacher, the teachable moment is whenever the kid's ready to ask.
Keep conversations going.
So anytime that you have sort of just the space to be kind of open with your kids and talk about it is always a good time. So when they're listening and when you can listen to them is always a good time to talk about it.
If you address something that you see objectively, something that you see perhaps on TV, perhaps a story that kind of circles around that event as opposed to dealing with something that they've done directly, something that they've done wrong, something that you've done wrong. I think a softer approach is better. At least bring them onto the same side as you are in the conversation.
I've always talked with him about what he's feeling around a certain topic. What are your emotions about it? Metacognition is the word. Just him understanding what he's going through and why, and was always, we did that from a very, very young age.
Talk, don't lecture.
You can't be forceful with them. It's a lot easier to have a discussion with them, a lot easier to gain their respect if you're on their side of things, understand it. If they grasp that you've been through it before, been through these same situations, whether it be having fun and having a few drinks with your friends or whatever it may be, I think they understand it a little better if they don't think you're preaching from a pedestal.
So I think if it's like, again, inviting them into the conversation, like, can you help me understand why you did that? Can you help me understand why you made that choice?
There was times that, we all screw up. It's a question of being there and talking about it when they screw up. And he has screwed up. He had a big party one time, and there were consequences. But he said, "I've learned my lesson."
But making sure that they feel like you're saying to them, "I'm not sure I like the behavior. I'm not sure I make the choice you made, but that doesn't change how I feel about you. I might be angry right now. I might be frustrated, but I still love you." And I think that's really key, because then they know at their heart that they are still cared for and still loved, and they still have a place of safety with you.
Because you want them to keep telling you things, but if you start flipping out on them every time, they're not going to tell you stuff, and then that's when it's really scary.
Don't be too hard on your kids, because they're going to test all kinds of things, right? And I think what you have to be there is be that voice, be that person that's going to say, hey, you know what? Last night you decided to go a place maybe you probably shouldn't. Let's talk about that, right? And not be afraid to go there and not make them feel bad about the choices that they make, but be there to help and coach and guide them.
when kids sense that their parents are reacting to something, they're more apt to keep it inside and not share it and not be open and tell them what's kind of going on. So I think it's really important to listen to your kids, ask some questions, but not to react, even if inside it's you really are, but try not to show it or have other outlets of letting that out. But it's really important to listen to your kids. If you don't do that and you react to them, they're not going to tell you things.
Take 2 steps back and start being closer to your kid first. Instead of trying to lecture the kid, get to know the kid better.
Being a role model.
I always go with that motto, your actions speak louder than your words.
I think observation is a very powerful tool. I think parents don't realize how much their kids digest that isn't necessarily the yaketa part.
Kids tend to tune you out after a bit. If there's a good TV show on while you're talking or anything like that, they'll half listen to you. But I think watching you, especially in a position where they're concentrating on what you're doing, or seeing you doing something that they would tend to do as well, they would learn more from you. But I think example is the biggest thing.
Your whole family are all role models, right? And if you come from a family that doesn't get that, I think that's a bit of a problem, right?
We can say to our kids, don't drink, don't do this, don't do that. But if we're turning around and doing the same thing, what does that say to them? If we say to them, it's really not good for you to get drunk, but here they are, we're having friends over and everyone around the table is completely hammered, and your kids pick up on that, I think that speaks so loudly to them.
And so luckily I come from a great family that, we're very, very tight. We have tons of kids. And, as you've watched your parents and grandparents get older, now you're the kind of the role model that these kids are looking to. And it's important. I take that role in my household really seriously.
Parents can help kids develop effective decision-making skills by providing a safe, supportive environment where they can talk openly about alcohol. Begin when they're young. Keep conversations going. Listen more than you talk. Resist the urge to lecture or to react emotionally if your kids drink. And remember that you are their most important role model when it comes to making healthy decisions about alcohol.
I was given some good advice from a friend of mine who's a police officer, and he said as long as you're in communication with your kids, that's the biggest key. Whether they're close friends with you, whether they're quite distant from you, as long as there's communication with you, that's an advantage. And I think you can use that to slowly bring in anything that you need to discuss with them, whether it be alcohol or drugs or sex or whatever it may be.
Learn more at AlcoholSenseBC.ca.